Hello, everybody. Before we get started on all this, I just want to talk a little bit about what even makes us qualified to talk about this. So, my name's Jamie. I am the founder of Living the Off Grid Dream. 3 years ago or so, my business went bankrupt during COVID, and I didn't know how I was going to eat and feed myself in the next few weeks. And since we were kind of at rock bottom, I just said, okay, well, why don't we go and do this thing that I've always wanted to do, which is to go buy a big chunk of land and just live close to nature and just be at peace and live a good life. So we ended up we started with no money, and we were able to buy land. We were able to make nearly passive income with it within 7 months. After starting on completely barren land with nothing on it, we were making about $30,000 a month. We built a homestead, retreat center, a regenerative farm using permaculture methods, and today we're going to tell you how we've done that. And since then, as you can tell, we are now doing the education side of that because people kept asking, so magically here we are. Which has been awesome. We're very grateful for everybody that we've got to work with, and we'll go over some cool examples throughout this workshop to show you what people have been able to achieve with our systems. So first, we're going to talk about raising funds. That's kind of the first step, and that's just basically raising funds to get into land, and then also some cool options that you can use for getting land for really cheap and low monthly payments with no credit checks, with no banks, and all of that good stuff. Because when we started, our credit was really bad as well. So there's some really cool stuff, and one of them is rent to own, otherwise known as owner financing. So what does this even mean? Oh. What does this even mean? Basically, rent to own or owner financing is where you can go in and you can often put a low down payment down, and you can pay a mortgage directly to a landowner or the previous landowner instead of to a bank. So it's just a private deal where there's no bank involved. And that's pretty much it. The owner is financing it to you instead of the bank. So instead of you going and having to pay somebody 500 grand or $1 million or whatever for their piece of land, you might go and be able to pay $3,000 a month for it or something of that sort. And the cool part about this is that we can also show you, which we'll talk about in this program. We'll talk about how you can then use the land to cover its own purchasing costs, so that you can make more money with the land. Maybe you make 10 grand a month and you pay them 3. You're left over with enough income to build stuff on it and things of that sort. So a really cool really cool thing about this, or a cool option that we see, is that there's an older generation that has bought land for pennies on the dollar 60 plus years ago. Their kids want nothing to do with it. They live in the cities now. They don't want to take care of this 100 acres or 40 acres or whatever it is. And these folks, they don't want it to go to BlackRock. They want it to go to somebody. If you don't know what BlackRock is like this big conglomerate investing company that I think like Bill Gates and stuff all invest in and whatnot. And they are like a multi-trillion-dollar company, and by value, they own 24% of the entire United States market, and they are a worldwide investment organization. So they're buying up all the farmland and stuff. Not all the farmland, but lots of it, which is pretty crazy. And they don't want to see it to go to some conglomerate. They want to see it to go to someone good who actually has a vision for it. We have some really cool examples of that, of people helping people out. And we'll talk about one next. So it's a lot to take care of. Imagine being in your 80s and you have all of this land. You've got 100 acres to take care of. That's a lot of work. And honestly, at that age, they can kind of use the income. So this is an example of somebody. She's a neighbor. So Elizabeth is a neighbor of ours. So this is actually her Cougar Mountain Therapy Center. This is her. She has 3 of the biggest, most beautiful log homes that I've ever seen. This is her smallest one. And imagine her in her 70s and 80s out there having to sand these down by hand and restain them to take care of them and manage the gardens and landscaping and everything around, fire breaks, etc. It's a ton of work. So essentially, for people like this, you would be able to go in there and you would be able to make a deal where you can go in and say, okay, you have 100 acres. How's this? How about you stay on your 100 acres, and you get 10. You get to live in your home. You still get 10 acres around your home. I'll take the other 90. I'll help maintain that part of the property. And then they also get paid for the owner financing. So their lifestyle does nothing but goes up. They get to live in their house. They get paid now. And when they die, they know that their land is going to somebody good who is really appreciative of that land and who's doing something good with it. So that's an example of owner financing stuff. And Elizabeth actually did this. So she looked for a family that was local because she had nobody that wanted to take her land, and she didn't want to sell it to anybody and whatnot. And so she ended up partnering with a really nice family that came in and started to take it over and maintain it all. So there's two main ways of finding it. The first is door knocking, and I know a lot of people right away are probably like, I don't really want to do that, but I think it's a really underrated way in these small communities of being, like Elizabeth is a great example. If she was looking for years, if you went and just networked and kind of found your way in there and talked to people, and you went and posted up at the community bulletin boards, driving around in smaller towns and areas and getting to know folks. Good example, Kenton, who is on our team, he's a really outgoing guy. He came into our little town and he works for us. So he came in, he's our permaculture lead. And I love, he's a really outgoing dude. So he goes down to the local community center. He gets talking with the person. He ends up going for dinner with them. They invite him for dinner. And that dinner, he meets all these other people. He meets the person writing for the local newspaper, so on and so forth. So basically within 24 hours, he knew probably half the names, the big names in the entire town. So it really doesn't have to be that tough, and it doesn't have to take that long. You just have to go out there and do it. And the thing is that nobody does it, and that is why I think it's so underrated, because people in these small towns also really appreciate that. The second is a software like PropStream. So this is really interesting. A lot of people haven't heard about this kind of stuff. So PropStream is a software that basically you can go in and you can type in you can search any kind of data that you're looking for related to real estate. So you could go in, for example, and you could, give me a sec here. And you could go into PropStream, something like this, and you could use this software and you could type in that you're looking for, let's say you're looking for somebody who's owned land for 60 years. You can see if they have a mortgage or no mortgage or how much they owe on the mortgage. You could, find land in a rural area of a certain acreage type. You can see what their mortgage payments were, how much they bought the land for, how much it's worth now, all these different data points. And you can filter all those to find people who have no mortgage anymore because they bought land for pennies on the dollar, so they have no mortgage. So it makes it really easy for those people to owner finance it to you, because they don't need to go through a bank. If they owe a mortgage, then they need you to go to a bank because they need all the money up front to then be able to obviously pay the bank back because they owe them money. So it's a really, really interesting software. So that is the second way of finding people. And then what folks do is they'll take it'll give them it'll pump out lists and lists, like hundreds, thousands of addresses, and it has mailing and contact info. So you can call them. A lot of people just mail them letters. So you can just mail them. That's the most common way, is people will mail or hop on the phone. It's kind of both. But yeah, often people will send them a letter in the mail and just explain and tell your vision, which we'll talk about here, on how to communicate your vision to people so that people align with your values. So talk about your vision and what you want for their property and their land and all the good things that you plan on doing with it. And then from there, it's really a numbers game. It's not like you don't just try a couple times. No, you send 100 or a few hundred letters in the mail or phone calls or whatever, and you'll start to see a percentage. So, right, maybe 10% of people get back to you. So you go out and you send it to 300 people, and then you get 30 people replying. And then you can go out and you take a look at those pieces of property and go from there. So that is how to find them. Or you could have somebody do it for you. So that's essentially what websites like this do. So this is a website called Discount Lots. We'll check it out in a second. If you do ever want to get any land from Discount Lots or something like that, let us know. We have contacts with a lot of different sites like this. So we can usually get you a discount code that gives you a bit of money off. So, or some kind of better service or something. We don't take any money out of it. So we're just trying to help you out. So discount lots, basically they go out and they do exactly what I just said, but they do it for you. So it just makes it easier for you. So this is one example. There are other examples out there. So essentially, it takes all that work of having to, use that software and then find these people and contact them and then see how many of them want to potentially do owner financing. So Discount Lots does that, and they take all of those, they buy them themselves, and then they resell them to you for a little bit more money. But they make it really, really easy. So there's, let's say you want something in Florida. You can go here, and there's just a whole bunch of different lots on there. And yeah, let's just play around with it for a second. All states, monthly payments, acreage. So yeah, let's set some stuff. I want a minimum of, let's say, 10 acres or something. And you can go check out Colorado for 10 acres. Or you could go check out, search as I move the map. I don't know. It seems like it's not fully loading right now. And their inventory changes because it goes pretty quick. So if you want something like this, then I would stay on top of it. But anyways, yeah, you can come in here and you can look at land, and they have a lot of actually decent zoning options and stuff too. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The cool thing about working with these guys is their offer is $1 down on land and low monthly payments. So the payments start, I would say, around $300 up to about $1,000 a month. So you put $1 down, and then you do a rent to owner financing with them, and then the cool part again is that we can show you how to generate income with it, so that you can then have the property actually pay for itself. So yeah. This is also, you need no credit checks. There's no real estate commissions or fees. There's no banks of any sort involved. There's, what do they say? Yeah, you get off-market listings, so that's cool. Like a lot of real estate, a lot of owner financing deals, they're not on the market. Like you can't go on a normal real estate website and find them, obviously. So yeah, with this, you get a lot of stuff that you just straight up wouldn't find anywhere else. So yeah. It's that's your option for finding land for cheap. A lot of people don't know that exists, but there's also some other stuff. So Landio, I actually really like following these guys. They don't do a lot of owner financing, but they do. They point out a lot of stuff like Tennessee, 2.5 acres, $45,000. Colorado, $30,000, $66,000, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000. So they feature a lot of really cool properties that are pretty affordable, especially when you just have to put 30 to 50% down, depending on if it's barren. Some of these you might be able to actually put 15% down or something like that. So, and we'll talk about how you can raise money for that down payment. So that is one that I always like. Landmodo, we don't have to go through all these, but you can just pause the screen and check some of these out. Quality Vacant Land, Instant Acres, Land Gen. So these are people on TikTok that actually do the job for you. So right, like these are just social media accounts that they go out and they do the job. So they'll go and find you, 40 acres in Colorado, like blah blah blah, and they'll find land wherever, and then you can just skip that searching part and just follow these guys. Axty Real Estate, this one's an interesting one. So their concept, I've talked with him before, and their concept is crowdfunding for land. So essentially what they do is they get a bunch of people together. Sorry, my neck's a little bad. And if my teeth are weird, it's because I'm drinking chlorophyll, by the way. So these guys go out and they crowdfund land. So they get a bunch of people together, and everybody has to put in a security deposit. I think it's like 10 grand or something. And then when there's enough people to go actually make the purchase on a property, they'll go and buy 200 acres, and then they'll subdivide it all up, and everybody gets their 10 acres or whatever it might be. So it's interesting. It's an interesting model. I don't know how many sales they've done, and you kind of have to put the money in first, but then kind of wait a little bit until if or when they find the lot that is going to be subdivided. Yeah, so that's I don't know. This one, I think it's a really cool concept. I just think it's a little bit of a barrier to entry because you have to put the money down first, and then you're just kind of like in a limbo waiting mode until everything kind of goes through on their side, and there's not exactly a timeline as to when that could be, but still a cool option to check into. But I personally would probably use different funding options, but look into it. Uh, some more here again. Pause the screen if you want to check those out. Some there, Canada and different countries and stuff. So, and then if you want more expensive land, like obviously some of those lands, like I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible. A lot of those parcels, like we plan on buying something through discount lots. Like that's probably where I would go, or any of these other places that are just. That are cheaper. And the reason for that is because a lot of people think that basically what we kind of specialize in is taking land that people think is unusable, therefore not valuable, and then making it usable and making it valuable by getting creative and using creative techniques. For example, permaculture. So our property we bought for 215,000. It's 160 acres, so it's about $1,500 an acre. That's super cheap. And now, about 3 years after building on it, it's probably worth around $1 million. Sorry, so that's a 5x increase, which is almost unheard of in real estate, which you get from rural land. Like the rural land market is really cool in that, because if you were to go flip a house, it's the house already exists. The need is already there. You're just addressing a want because you're throwing a coat of paint on and making it look better. And people are happy to get a 30 to 50% return on a regular house in the city. Whereas with rural land, you have way more land. You can build way more stuff, and there's nothing really on it. So you can take it from a 0 to 7, instead of it's like that points of value is so much bigger than if you're in the city. It's already built, so you're already at a 7 or an 8, and you're just going from a 7 or an 8 to a 10. So you have like 2 or 3 points of value that you're bringing and creating there. Whereas if you're going from scratch to something, you're bringing way more value to the land, and then the land value increases way more. And then you can refinance and leverage your equity to then, like, we could take out, we only owe, I don't know now, like under 100,000 on our mortgage, yet our land is worth $1 million. So we could go borrow 800 grand and build whatever we want. So yeah, there's lots of cool plays with that, but that's what we kind of specialize in, is finding those properties that people don't think are usable and making them usable. For example, people don't think our property is farmable, but we use permaculture techniques to make it farmable and turn it into a paradise. All sorts of cool stuff you can do. So. I want to, or the other option is, if you want more expensive land, or different land that some of these other options don't offer, that's one side of raising funds, and the other side is that you make your whole project faster and easier and more comfortable and things of that sort. So these are all really awesome things to go over, so I'm excited to dive into these. So we'll start with investors. So why would somebody want to invest in something like this? So that example that I just gave you about our land going from 200,000 to around $1 million is we had what I would call a mortgage partner. So a mortgage partner came in, and we'll go over the BRRRR method. So we'll go over a couple more things for the real estate market here, and one is it's not working. Never mind. One is that in the city, people are paying like 500 grand for a rental property, and they'll make 3 grand a month, something like that. But with rural land, we pay 210,000 for 160 acres, and we make 30 grand a month. So that's cheaper property, 10 times as much money, which is pretty crazy. So with rural land, you can make 10 times as much money. The income diversification is a lot more because with you like people who invest in real estate, if you buy a home in the city or something, you're lucky to have a suite, maybe 2 suites or something to rent out of it, and you can either do short-term or long-term rentals, and that's kind of it. Whereas with rural land, you can have, like, if you get the right zoning, which we'll talk about here too, you can have hundreds of dwellings. You can do short-term rentals, long-term rentals. You can rent space out for storage. You could have events. You could just open up a field and let people come host their weddings there and put a tent up. You could do camping. You could do raw materials on the land. We have gravel. We have timber. We can sell that. We have to do a fire break anyway, so we could do carbon credits. We could do, there's so many different diversified income options. You could do dozens of different types of farming. There's all sorts of different stuff that you just can't do on a regular home, in a regular building or house in the city. And the big one is that you can use it too, because you know we had a home at one point in the city, and we sold it, and I lost all my money in the company that went bankrupt a few years ago. But unfortunately, what was tough about that is you can't really rent it out and have it as a cash flowing asset while you're also living in it. It's kind of tough sometimes. Whereas with this, there's so much more space, so you can go and do whatever it is that you want. It could be a full-time place for you to live. It could also be a kind of cabin getaway for you, like a little vacation property. So it increases the lifestyle points as well. And your equity goes up more, which I already explained. So yeah, flipping a regular house, like I mentioned, people be happy with a 30-50% return. And it's already there. You're just making it better. You're addressing a want. But with rural land, we had a way bigger increase. We have a way bigger points of value that we're increasing it because we're addressing a need. We're going from nothing to creating, opportunities in housing and experiences for people. We're not just taking something that already exists and making it a little bit better. We're going from nothing to something great. So we're addressing a need with that. And a good example is actually drilling a well. So we know people that flip rural land and all they do is drill a well on it. So they'll go buy barren property. They'll do their research, which we'll talk about in this video, on how to know if a property has water, and then they'll drill a well, which costs about 20 grand, and that will increase the price by about 100 grand, and then they'll just sell it. So very easy way to flip a rural piece of property. And that just goes to show a 5x return on investment. So if you put 20 grand in and it goes up by 100,000, that's 5x. That's 500%. So that's a 5x return. If you do that into a regular house, you don't get that. You get like maybe a 1.5 to 2x. So again, just another reason why rural land is something that is just happens to be not only the big lifestyle thing, but also just a really good financial investment. And this is why somebody, again, coming back to that, this is why somebody would help you buy it. So essentially, going back to the question as to why somebody would help you buy it is because they basically make money with it. So our investor, for example, he helped us buy it, and then he sat back and didn't do anything, and we did all the work. And that is what made the value go from 200 to $1 million. And he sat back, and his value in it went up by 5x, and he didn't have to do anything except for help us get it in the first place. So that is the value. So people tend to think that it's like, oh, I don't have money, I need to go and get money from somebody. No. You have time, you have knowledge, they have money. You're coming together to offer each other an opportunity and create an opportunity that is greater than the sum of its parts. It's not one. People usually think it's one for the investor and zero for them because they have money and they don't. That's not true. It's actually one for them, one for you. You're both putting in value and making this possible. And 1 + 1, in this case, you're not trying to make it equal 2, you're trying to make that equal 5 because you're both creating more value for one another by working together. And that is why somebody would do this. So we will. I want to just see quickly if we go over any of the BRRRR method stuff. Yeah, so we'll talk about some of the BRRRR method stuff. So what does it look like to get an investor? Like, what does this actually look like? What's the deal structure and all of that kind of stuff? So the first thing I always want to say is that they're real people. This isn't some like fancy corporate office. I'm not going and like pitching people like wearing a suit or anything. That's not what it's like. These are just real normal people. This is like our first time sitting down. my first, the mortgage partner that we have, we just met in a cafe. We met in a cafe, we had lunch, we just talked about everything. We talked about mental health, we talked about kids, we talked about family, we talked about, struggles in our lives. We talked about our partners, we talked about previous experiences that we've had partnering up with people. It was really personal. It was getting to know each other personally, just like a friend would. It was very easygoing, and that's what we talked about for probably about an hour. And then after that, we're just kind of like, all right, what do you want to do? Let's get down to business. They was like, how much money do you want, and what are you going to do with it? and then you just say, here's what I'm thinking, and go from there, and then strike a deal that you think is fair. So, which we'll talk about. So yeah, I just want to clear that up because people hear the word investor and think that it's like crazy, but it's really not. They're just normal people that have a bit of money. They could be a local small business owner, and whatever. It's not like you're going and talking to some big corporate office kind of person. We actually don't want to do that. We want to make sure that these people are aligned with you and your vision. So yeah. Second, what under conventional real estate investment looks like. A good one is the BRRRR method, which stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and then I forget what the S stands for. I don't know if that's actually a part of it. I think the S is supposed to not be a capital. So yeah, it's buy, renovate, which means rehab, like make it nicer. So buy, renovate, rent it out, and refinance it. This is a very long-term method. So you'd buy a house, you'd renovate it, you put a renter in it, you'd rent that thing out for like dozens of years, like decades, and then you would refinance it once the value goes up, and then you would do it all over again. Because using the refinancing money, let's say in our case, we could refinance the property, pull out hundreds of thousands, and then use that to go buy the next property and do it all over again and build a big real estate portfolio. So what a very common structure, a deal structure for this is that the person with the money takes 50% ownership for buying the house. So they put down the down payment and they co-sign for it to get the mortgage to purchase it. And then the 50% goes to the person who manages it, which in this case, if you're looking for an investment partner to go in and buy land with, would be you. In that case, in my case, it was me. So we manage it. Again, we're the ones doing the work. So this is the person that's doing the renovations and getting the tenants in there to rent it and dealing with the whole thing and managing it. And they get 50%. So we basically took that and we applied that to rural land. And this is what we shoot for. We generally shoot for we try to have a little bit more ownership. They should say 70, not 60. So 30 to 50% goes to the person with the money ownership, and 50 to 70%, that's wrong, sorry, 50 to 70% to you for building it out and managing it. And the reason why is because all of the value is increases so much more with rural land. So you can demonstrate that with a business plan and a spreadsheet that just shows the amount of money that you'll be generating on the land, and then how you're reinvesting that in what you're building. And when you build things, the land value goes up. So you can actually project that into the future, and you can show people when you meet them and be like, look, we're going to buy this lot, and in 5 years it's going to be worth 5 times more. It's going to be worth X. And then they'll say, well, prove it to me. So then you show them the numbers of how exactly you're going to spend the money. That's step one. And then if they still want you to prove it to them, what you do is you go find other lots that have things built on them. So you find something, maybe you want to do a farm or something. So you go find a farm that's fully built out and has a big shop, and it has orchards, and it has animals, and it has fencing, and it has wells, and it has the infrastructure and power that it needs, and a house on it, whatever. So you go and you find that, and then you come back to them and you say, okay, yeah, this one, check this out. Well, you wouldn't go find it, you'd have it ready. You'd say, yeah, check this one out. Like this one's all built out, it's fancy, it's great, this is what I'm going for, and this one's worth, X millions of dollars. So that just solidifies it and shows them that if you do something like that, that land will be worth that much. So that is why, because of the extra value increase with rural land, that is why we go for a little bit higher ownership. But either way, we'll talk about buyback rights as well. So yeah, why would somebody do this? To sum it up, our partner put the money in, sat back, we put the work in, his value went up by 5x. So that's why it's a good investment for them. Plus, they get the lifestyle use out of it. They can come and use it as a family vacation property or like whatever. Some people want to invest just because they love the vision, which we'll talk about. So keeping buyback rates, this is something that we always try to do. Keeping buyback rates basically means that you can buy out your investment partner anytime you want. So how that works is that as you increase the value of the land, their shares are going to be worth more. So let's just say they own 30%, and let's take our example. Let's say we have an owner of the land. They helped us buy it. They own 30%, and we bought it for 200 grand. So when they start, they have 60 grand worth of value. That's 30% of 200. But now it's worth $1 million. So now their 30% is no longer 60 grand. Now it's 300 grand. So we can buy them out whenever we want. So we can use the money we're making from the land, and we can go to them and say, oh, here's 30 grand. Now we're buying 10% of your shares back with 30 grand because, it's worth 300. So you can buy them out at fair market value anytime. And then you can slowly do that. So within 2 years, we've actually we're now buying one of our investment partners out, which is really great. I've had a few businesses, and this is the fastest we've ever been able to do that, which is really awesome. So it's kind of like taking a long-term loan per se. Like that's a way that you could think about it, because this person you're able to pay it back whenever you want and buy the shares back, and when you do that, you then are able to have full ownership. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. And how to do it is you would essentially just have that in a term. It'd just be a little clause in your agreement when you go in to purchase land with somebody, and we have these agreements and whatnot and more details on how to use that. So we try to lay it out so it's a step-by-step process for you. So it's super easy. We have all the plans. We were talking earlier about financial projections and stuff. We have all of that pre-filled out, fully ready to go for you. So you can scroll down and click below to get it if you haven't already. That's kind of the whole point of what we do, is make this very easy for you, or as easy as possible, I should say. The whole process of these projects, I'm not going to tell you it's easy because it's not, but it is very doable. And I guess it depends on everybody's concept of what's easy or hard. Yeah, so we give you the step-by-step guides and the templates and everything pre-filled out so that you can go and do it. And we'll see how it's worked for other people in a bit. So, yeah, that's pretty much how you do it. It would just be a clause or a term in there, and then you can hand them money whenever and start to pay that off and take back full ownership of the land and have full control of the project, so they can't come in and tell you what to do and ruin your project or like whatever it is. So here's how we've always found investors. These are essentially the only two things that we've ever done for our entire project, is to write out your vision and to then broadcast it. So we have a special way of how to write your vision out and whatnot. But first, I just want to use some examples of this actually working, I suppose. So here's some examples. Where's Carson? So Carson actually took these our communication method, and he put it into a Facebook post, and we'll just. He wasn't sure whether he should start or not. He didn't really know where to go. He didn't really know how to find anybody to help him. So he used our communication methods, and he went out there and he made 2 posts on Facebook. And you can see here, he got maybe you can see here, I don't know, down there he got hundreds and hundreds of likes, hundreds and hundreds of comments. Between the two, he got thousands and thousands of likes and comments. And within about 24 hours, he had 10 land offers. And the very next morning after posting this, he was sitting down with somebody who was offering to invest in his project, which is super powerful. So when people think it's hard to make those connections and stuff, it's really not. It's really, really not. So another good example is actually Cole. Cole, I find, is so funny. He did some crazy stuff. So He went out and he basically was knocking on doors, trying to wholesale houses. He was doing some landscaping and stuff, and he was trying all that, and it wasn't really working. And then he got into rural land, and the rural land market, he discovered owner financing, which is what we're talking about. A lot of people do that. About 30% of people are open to doing that. So he ended up buying 14 off-grid properties in Texas, Tennessee, and West Virginia using owner financing methods. And he's 22 years old, and he did that in the last 12 months. 14 properties in the last 12 months, which is pretty crazy. So how he got started is he actually just called a real estate agent. So he was just like trying to figure it out. He called somebody who was selling a piece of property, one of the real estate agents, and just picked their brain. He was just asking for information. And right away that person is like, oh yeah, no, I'm actually part of a networking group. Like, here, let's sit down and we'll, I'll help you out or whatever. In another instance, he went to a gas station, and at a gas station, he made business cards and he put it in the credit card slot. So people at the gas station, they'd have to pull it out in order to pay for gas. And he got a phone call the next day from somebody just being like, oh, hey, I saw what you're doing. Super happy to chat. And that person introduced him to people, and now he has this network of people that are all willing to help him go out and buy these properties, which is, really, so it's just goes to show that the way that you express yourself and the strategies you use doesn't, it's not that difficult, and you can totally do it. And we have other options for you as well. So basically, Carson used our methods. He had an investor meeting in 24 hours. Cole made one phone call and had one and connections to multiple people. So how we do this, like Carson's example, for example, writing your vision, we use a VSPA format. It's Vision Problem Solution Ask. And this can be used pretty much anywhere, doing anything. And how we do this is essentially, let's say you're sitting down for a lunch meeting with somebody and you're talking about doing this. Instead of going like, oh, hey, can I have some money? That's probably not going to work for you. People don't really give a shit. That's not going to go very far. But if you go sit down and you say, hey, wonder what you do. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to, buy 100 acres with a river on it and just, have that as a vacation property to be able to go and grow your own food and raise a family, to have a place for your kids to run, or like whatever the vision is for you. And be like, I've just been feeling so down and stressed by society and the amount of concrete. I feel like people aren't getting enough air. I feel like there's just, toxic shit in our water, and our food is sprayed with crap, and it's super expensive, and blah, blah. Like, I just feel like it would be really cool to have a property of our own. If we had a property like that, we could do all of those things. So that's problem. And then, getting into the solution. So we talk about the vision. There's a high in the vision. Then you dip down to the problems in society and the reasons why you want to do this. What problems are pushing you and causing you pain that you want to do this? And then build back up into the solutions, which is when I was talking about if we had a property, we'd be able to do this. That's the solution. And then at the end of it, you just be able to like, hey, I've been looking at properties lately. Would you, I found a couple cool ones. You want to check them out? And that's the ask. That's how you lead into that. And you look at properties, whatever, and then you're like, would you be interested in going in on something like this with me? Then it's easy. It's very conversational. And you can use that for anything. And what this is the format that's found in every great speech ever recorded in human history because of the contrast. It's not just monotone, like, hey, you want to do this? It's like vision, problem, it dips down, and then it builds back up into the solution. And that contrast gets people emotionally hooked to what it is that you're talking about, emotionally invested in your vision and what you're trying to do. So that's what Carson did, and that's how he got all of those replies really quickly and connected with all those land offers and with a potential investment offer in less than 24 hours. So there's definitely ways to do it. And lastly, we actually just have our investors network. So we actively build this out on your behalf to help connect you to people to make this whole process a lot easier. And because we just straight up had people reaching out who were... what is going on here? Investor profiles. So here's what this looks like. So you can go through, you see their name, photo, a bio about them, strengths that they have, because it's more than just money when it comes to partnering with somebody. Like, how can they actually help you bring this to life? How much they're looking to invest, and what they are interested in for return for their investment options as well. So some people just do it because they straight up, like, these are listed in order. So he wants a vacation property, he wants a self-sufficient place to go. Like, those are important things to him. And then just to share in any money that the property might be making. So yeah, and even locations that they're interested in. So we have over 100 people in here, and yeah, you can go in here and check it out. If you'd like, you can scroll down and be a part of our VIP group, where you can get all of your plans reviewed by me personally twice a month. We can work together for as long as you need, and then we can submit them to all these investors and get you connected to them to move forward if this is the route that you would want to go. And you can also use this not just to get into land, but also to raise the funds to build things on the land once you get it. So other funding options, just to get creative, that is cool. One is logging. So it's kind of needed for the fire break and stuff on a property anyway. If you're in a place that has trees, in pretty much most of the world, you're probably in a potential fire zone. So you'd want to be able to have fire break and clear for some sites that for building sites and things like that. So there's potential for logging, not on all properties, obviously, but on some. So just something to look out for. We got a quote for our property for 50 to 60,000, and that's when lumber has been, 60,000 if we just wanted to do like building sites and a bit of a fire break and stuff. They said they could selectively log like half our property or something, and it was like 100 and how much do they offer, like 160K or something like that. So we bought a property for 210,000, and we could log half of it and start fresh on that half for 160. Not to say that that's right, but the fire break and the building stuff, like, you kind of may as well, because you need that anyway. It's actually helpful to protect the rest of your forest from not burning down. And in our case, our place was logged and had been through forest fires like 60 years ago. And there used to be 40 species of plant life that was, or trees in our area, native to our area. And then what they come do is they come and plant like 3 species. So it's already been messed up by humans. And because we're using permaculture practices, we can actually make that better if we start with a clean slate. And a good example of this is to watch the documentary Biggest Little Farm. I believe it's on Netflix, at least at the time of this recording. And they actually they had a permaculture consultant. They built a beautiful regenerative farm, and their permaculture consultant came in and said, bulldoze the entire thing and start from scratch. So it's not always a bad thing to have to, or not to have to, but to start with a clean slate. So yeah, pretty cool. Those metrics comparing one another, 200 grand to, getting somewhere from 60 to 160,000 for logging. And people used to do this all the time. It used to be common, how to flip properties. People would buy it, log it all, make way more money in the logging, and then sell the property again. Another one is carbon credit. So this is kind of the opposite of logging. So basically you get paid to keep your trees or to increase the carbon storage on your property. So how this works is essentially a carbon bank is it's a place where usually corporations, but also individuals, will go to offset their carbon footprint. So let's say you're a big company like Microsoft or something, and you have all this pressure to look good to people and offset your carbon footprint. Well, they'll go to a carbon bank and they'll say, okay, I need to offset X amount of carbon, and the carbon bank will be okay, and they'll go to someone like you who's a landowner, and they will assess your land and say, okay, how much carbon is on this property, and they will pay you that amount for you to just steward the property, meaning don't cut things down and don't ruin the landscape. But the cool part is that also if you're using regenerative methods and building the soil back up, and you have like some tree planting stuff and you're storing some water and whatever it might be using permaculture, or have some animals, like naturally the animals will do that anyway, you can actually make money every year. They can come back and assess the property every year, and if you're making good progress in storing more carbon and rebuilding the soil and whatnot, then they'll actually pay you more money because you're storing more carbon. So this is a cool option that not a lot of people know about. We got quoted when we started our property 3 years ago. We were quoted around, what was it? It was around 150,000 for the full 160 acres. So that's kind of cool. Like between the two, we could log what we need for fire break and then pull carbon credits on the rest and almost cover the entire cost of the property to begin with. And these are all cool things that you can use to help to get somebody to help you get land and then just pay them back using things like this. So that's cool. Basically, our permaculture consultant that assessed the land, he looked at it and he said, I would wait. He said, wait, if you guys waited 5 years before you pulled the carbon credits and you rebuilt the soil so much because of our plan to do that and plant some more trees and, build a pond and things like that, and have animals on the property, he figured it would be worth about 500,000 because the price of carbon credits is going up with more pressure on the environmentalism side of things. So that's pretty cool if you worked on the property for a bit and then pulled out $500,000 in carbon credits out of it. So cool potential. Joint ventures is a personal favorite of mine. Joint ventures is essentially a mutually beneficial joint venture, mutually beneficial engagement between you and somebody else. So this is a cool option I think it's a cool option to bring in structures without having to pay for them. So we've been approached by both businesses and private people to, for example, build us tiny homes. So they would build us a tiny home, and then they would come and park it on our property, and then we would rent it out. And we would take 70% of the income, and they take 30. We take 70 because we're managing it. So it's beneficial to them because they then have recurring income that they don't need to manage. It's beneficial for us because we don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get structures on our property and be able to make some money with it. We'll talk about how you can nearly automate that in a bit as well. So, yeah, we've also been approached by private people who aren't businesses, that they don't build tiny homes for a living, but they just want to build something in their backyard. They're like, look, I'm a carpenter by trade. I want to come home after work and I want to build a couple tiny homes for you guys and put them on your property and do a profit split. So yeah, that's really cool to be able to get some stuff on your property without having to pay for any of it. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. You'd have to like get it set up. Like you'd have to get a site ready and make sure the roads are in, like things of that sort, depending on the property. So, but there's easy ways to do that. More funding options. Another one is crowdfunding. So we did a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo. We know people that have done them on Kickstarter and all sorts of stuff. I'll show you some examples. We raised $67,000 with ours. And then here's another example that I really love. The Purpose Hotel, they did 680,000 just about. So yeah, you can raise a fair bit with this kind of stuff. The Purpose Hotel is they did a good job with their video. That's why I use them as an example. So crowdfunding is a cool option. Now, the real benefits of crowdfunding aren't actually in the money. A lot of people just do it for the money, but the real benefits are outside of that. So after we did that crowdfunding campaign, we also got about $60,000 worth of donations in the form of building materials. We got a teepee, we got a sauna, we got bell tents, we got kitchen appliances, and these bell tents and stuff, like we could rent them out. The teepee, we use for retreats. We got wood stoves for our homes. We got tools. We got free tools to work with. We got loads of lumber. We got loads of steel to build with and all sorts of stuff. So it attracted a lot of donations and help. It attracted volunteers. It also attracted investors. It attracted more people coming to us instead of us having to go find them like a needle in a haystack. We turned ourselves into a magnet to attract those people to us. I've done this 3 times. Every single time I've done it, I've been approached by between 1 to 3 investors every single time, and I retained investment every single time. So that it's a really cool way, really awesome way to gather all of these other benefits and have people that are willing to help your project and bring it to life. Also attracted a lot of experts to work with us. So yeah, it's a good, cool option. Next, I want to talk about land zoning, getting the ultimate freedom land zoning. So why is land zoning a big deal? It can stop your entire project if you have the wrong land zoning. Let's say you have to know exactly what you want to do on the property before you buy it. And if you don't, then you could buy something that has the wrong land zoning. And if it does, then you might be totally messed up. So an example of that is we had some friends. They bought 80 acres, I believe, on an island called Salt Spring Island off the coast here on the West Coast. And they spent millions. They spent their savings on building a beautiful retreat center. Now they went to open it, and then because the zoning and regulations weren't what they were hoping, they weren't able to open, and that put them in a really bad scenario because now they can't use it to produce any income and work from home like they wanted to. But they also can't open, so they can't sell the land because nobody wants to buy it when it can't open. So it's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So that's an example of why zoning is really, really important. And we have no zoning. So what is no zoning? No zoning is a type of land zoning that is basically no zoning, which means there's no bylaws. So you can build normally on like other types of zoning, you can usually build like a house, and you can have like one or two, like a shop or one or two like outbuildings kind of thing. And there's like little like loopholes and things that you can use to build more stuff. But no zoning, you can build 1,000 homes. You can build them as close together as you want. You could have a rave until 5 a.m. every morning. You could build a skyscraper, a roller coaster. You can operate a business, and you don't need a license to do so. It's kind of like the free for all of zoning. You still need to build things by code. They still need to be good structures so that they don't burn down and start a forest fire, which is beneficial to you and your neighbors. But it is the ultimate freedom land zoning. You start a tiny home community, like whatever it is that you want. You got unlimited people living there. So how do you find no zoning? So this is a big one. You can go on government mapping system. So this is ours, which I will show you, and I'll see if I can plan and build. I'll just search map and see if anything comes up. So launch this map, and I'll show you guys kind of. So this is something that every government and regional district or state or it's not state but county, every county office, provincial office, like or regional district office, whatever you're in, whatever governing body you're in, they mandatorily have to have this. So where is it? Layers, layer list, land zoning. So, electoral area, E. So here, no zoning. So we just have straight up no zoning. So we can just by going on here and we just highlight the type of zoning that we want. So we go to zoning and we just highlight this one type of zoning that we want. If you go like this, you can see all these types of zoning. Well, if you go in here and you just highlight, okay, I want no zoning, this big gray area pops up, and you can do that across different counties and different provinces and whatever, and you can see all the lots that have no zoning. So now you know where you can start to look for land where you have the ultimate zoning to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do, almost. Yeah, that's a really cool tool that not a lot of people know exists, is being able to use these government maps to find and locate those areas. We're also going to put together in our course, and if you get into the course, we update it for free all the time, so you get all this. We're trying to put in the work for you. We're actually going to go through as much of the world as we can and locate all of the no zoning areas as possible, like everything that's possible. We'll locate it and put it on a map for you so that you can just know already where to look in the areas that you're interested in. So yeah, we're gonna, try to secure that info for you. Then I want to talk about generating nearly passive income. So this is not a one size fits all solution. This is not, we don't just give you one thing and we're like, here, copy. It's doing whatever you want. So we're helping you organize your own ideas so that you can do what you want and live the lifestyle that you want. But what you do first matters. So here's where I talk about organizing those ideas. So for example, a farm costs $1 million. It's going to take you 3 years to build to be able to operate that. It's going to make 200 grand a year. You're bankrupt by that point, unless you have a lot of money. But we started with nothing, so we didn't. But if you started with 100 grand and started with glamping, it takes 3 months to build. So it's 1/10 of the cost, 1/10 of the time to build, and it makes the same amount of money. So you'd pay it off instead of trying to pay that off over a 5-year period like farming, which takes 3 years to get going. So that's actually 8 years. You pay it off in 6 months. And then you can use that money to then build your farm, and you can actually be financially secure faster. So that's what I want to show you in this. This is a cost-benefit analysis. So a cost-benefit analysis is a simple version. We'll talk about other things you can put in here. But first off, you list all your ideas on the left, and then you list the cost next to it. So how much does it cost? And then you list the output. So how much is it benefiting you? How much is it bringing in? And then you do a ratio. So the cost, the ratio is just the cost divided by the output. That's it. And the ratio basically means that if you spend X, you'll get X in return. It will cost you X amount of dollars to make X in return. So for farming, for example, you're going to spend $5 and you're only going to make $1. So would you make that trade? Would you trade $5 for $1? Probably not. Whereas glamping in the first year, it's 1-to-1. So you pay it off completely in the first year, and then it is just basically showing you whatever the best ratio is. That's the one that you're gonna go with. So that's how we decide on which one we start with. It doesn't mean you can't do farming. It just means start with the one that's best, like this chart is showing glamping, and then reinvest. Maybe you have space for doing retreats, and then reinvest. And then you have 2 forms of cash flow, and then reinvest that into farming, and then you have 3 forms of cash flow. So you're diversifying your income so that you're financially secure. A lot of people think about these projects. They think about self-sufficiency. They think about growing food. They think about what that's the main thing: food, water, that kind of thing, shelter. But they forget about financial self-sufficiency, which helps make all of this possible to begin with, so that you can automate this and live the lifestyle that you want, and so on and so forth. So yeah, we actually tested this in real life with a garden example. This is our garden, just a little video on Instagram of it. This is Tanya, this is Carson. Carson's our caretaker. Tanya's a permaculture designer and a caretaker as well. They live on our property. This is actually B-roll that our editing team put in. This is grass. This has nothing to do with our garden. That's our common area. But yeah, garden again. So you can see hugel in the background if you look closely. That big mound is actually a hugelkultur mound. It's cool to look up if you don't know what that is. But essentially, we did a test, and they wanted a garden really bad. They wanted food security really, really bad. So we did a test, and they were telling us, okay, this garden's gonna do well and make some money and whatever. So what we did is we said, okay, we're gonna build the garden just as a test so that we can use it to educate people and our clients. And what ended up happening was we spent $30,000 building this garden out, and they then took the produce to market and made like $80. So it wasn't self-sustaining itself because it was still costing money for people's time to build this garden and for supplies and materials to build this garden every year, right? So instead, if we put 30 grand into glamping rentals, for example, or hosting a retreat or like a workshop or like whatever, like something else, or storage rentals, or having people come park their tiny home on the property or whatever it might be. And again, you don't have to live around this. We have 160 acres. We can do glamping on literally 5 acres of it, and then we have 155 acres to go play with. So if you're worried about people being on your property, you got lots to work with. we could have done, let's say, some rentals. We could have been making probably around, with 30,000, we probably could have been making around $10,000 a month or something like that. And then you have the financial security to then build your garden faster and better. So instead of just spending 3 months, spending 30 grand, and then you run out of money, we would be able to have an income that's consistent every month. So every month we could put in 10 grand. So let's drag that out over 12 months. Over 12 months, you'd have a garden that you spent 30 grand on in version 1, or in version 2, over 12 months, you'd have a garden that you spent 120 grand on. So your garden could be 4 times bigger every single year just by starting with glamping instead of starting with that with gardening. So you'd be 4 times as self-sufficient with food. And in the meantime, if you're worried about food self-sufficiency, start a smaller garden or get a seed bank going so that you have it in case of rainy day if you really need it, and just partner with people local to you so that you are friends with local farmers. So yeah, we tested that. So here's other things that I consider with this is the time and the automation were not part of the first one that I showed you. So time is obviously how long it takes to get going. So these are just examples. I'm just like threw numbers in here for you. Glamping, like you get glamping going in 3 months. You could actually get it going in 30 days, but I just threw some random numbers in here. And then how easy it is to automate. So if you don't want to be the one managing these things, then like we have the ability to leave our property anytime we want. Everything is managed. We've been operating for 3 years. I have not touched those tents of ours that are for glamping in 2.5 years. So it's been pretty much passive or nearly passive for us. And a farm is really hard to automate, whereas, other things are easier to automate. So we also take that into consideration when we're prioritizing where we're starting with what we're going to make money with. So here's what wins every time. Glamping and camping come out of top, renting space comes out as second, and workshops come third. So we do glamping instead of camping because we would prefer a lower volume of people and higher nightly rates so that we don't have to have so many people coming onto our property. And attracts, in our experience, it attracts better, a higher caliber of person that's more respectful and whatnot. So what we made, we were doing, we were running our tents for about $200 a night, roughly, give or take a cleaning fee. And we were renting out about an 80% booking rate, and we had 5 of them. So we were doing about 20,000+ just on those, and then we were doing a bit of rentals and stuff on top of that for space, like for retreat space or events and things of that sort, where other people just come and rent the whole place out and use it. People were driving 6 hours from a nearby city to come and stay at our spot for a few nights, which was really crazy. We weren't expecting that, but yeah, they do. So why does this work so well? The reason that this works so well is because there's no marketing involved. Like if you have to go and if you build a farm, you have to market that. You have to find people to buy your produce, or you have to drive it into town and sell it at a market. You have to convince people to buy that. Whereas with the glamping and camping side of things, all you have to do is one thing at the very beginning, which we call wow factor. You have to install some wow factor, and ours was having a sauna and a cold plunge, so it was a little hydrotherapy setup. But it could be something that's inherent to your property. It could be a river or a creek running through your property with a little swimming hole, or like something like that, that people just really want to be around. You take some photos of it. When you put that on the apps like Airbnb and HipCamp and stuff, they just crush it, and people come from all over the place. So if you do that one thing and you set it up properly at the beginning, you'll never ever have to do anything ever again. And we get this all the time where people are like, oh, well, you have a bunch of social media followers and stuff. For one, we did not when we started. We had none when we started at all. And even when we do, 99.5% of bookings come directly and organically through the app from people who have never heard of us before, ever. They don't even know that we have social media. So that's what helps automate it. There's a reason marketing agencies exist. It's a totally separate business. Oh, just checking and making sure this is still recording. Sweet. So we talked about wow factors. Having good photos is definitely a must. And then getting to keep your prices low at first, get a bunch of good ratings. So when you have lower prices, you have more people coming through, and more people coming through means you get more ratings faster. And then once you have a bunch of good ratings, then put your price up to what you want them. So that is that is that. And this is an example of Hannah. She is a client of ours, and she wanted to test her theory and see, okay, is this going to work before she actually bought land? So she went out and tested it and partnered with a local farm, and she put this tent up. So we can take a look at that. So this is her tent. It's just a little tent, very, very simple. Couple pallets out front with some chairs on them, little bed. Super simple. That's me doing an interview with Hannah. So she did this, and she booked out every weekend, and she was super stoked, major success. And now she's going and buying land, and she's doing it confidently because she knows that she can cover the cost of the land using something like this. Yeah, so what to use? I would start with bell tents. They're circular tents. You can look them up. And that's what I would start with. They go up really quickly. You can put them up in about 15 minutes and then just decorate them, throw some twinkle lights up, have some wow factor, little chairs outside. And then, just integrate some wow factor if you can. A wow factor could be like good cheap ones might be like a net that you put up in a tree that people can stargaze under, or a little outdoor movie theater, or like, I don't know, something cool that was going to attract people. And then how to do your research on, is this going to work in your area? I do mine manually on the app, so I'll just go on HipCamp or Airbnb, and I'll just like look up things in my area, and I'll just go and pretend I'm about to book them. I'll look at all their dates, and you can just see, okay, you know how much they're charging for one, and you can see how many dates they're booked out and how far in advance they're booked out. So right away, you can just be like, oh, okay, run some quick math and understand exactly how much money they're making in a month. Or you can use a software called AirDNA on Airbnb, and it will show you, it might do other stuff now too, but it'll show you all of the data in like specific niches and stuff. So yeah, that's an easy one. I believe it's like $20 or something. How to do research, how to make this work, stacking functions. So permaculture term. Oh yeah. Okay. There's a permaculture term, right? It just means dual purpose. So stacking functions just means that you're using one thing for more than one thing, if that makes sense. So the reason I put this in here is because the reason I like the glamping setups to start is because you can use them for more than just glamping. You can use them for renting space. You can use them for doing things like renting space for an event or retreat stuff or whatever. And we talk about how to find people for that in the next lesson. But, you can use them for, okay, never mind. We'll talk about this. You can use them for volunteers and whatnot. So like we had volunteers come and help us, and they stayed in there. You can use them for family and friends that might want to come help you out. You can use them for potential caretakers or staff. Like you can never have enough housing. Housing is the difficult thing to get. But if you have housing for people of any sort, even if it's a tent, you will get people to come and help you. So that's really great to stack functions for that. Even if you, like right now, we're actually not using our glamping tents. We don't really need them this season. So we're using them for volunteers to come and help us build out our farm. So it's the stacking function side of this is actually really, really, really helpful. You can never have enough housing. And then, not only could you rent them out on glamping, but you could host retreats, you could host workshops, you could let somebody come and rent the whole place out for a family reunion or a corporate retreat or a wedding or, whatever it might be. So yeah, they're one of the most like stackable functions of having the housing option on your property is really actually quite nice. So another one is renting space, something you could do to, make the money. But essentially, getting the land is the hard part, which we've talked about. The money is actually the easy part. So everything we're talking about now, this is actually the easy part. The easy part is making money with the land. It's automating it is tricky. So it's kind of like a shit sandwich. It's hard, easy, tricky. Hard, easy, hard. So we try to make it as easy as possible and give you all of the step-by-step guides and the templates pre-filled out and everything so you can take it and run with it. But yeah, the next one is workshops. So the reason we love workshops is that they're easier than retreats. The reason that they're easier than retreats is because people expect a more finely tuned experience with retreats. So you have to spend more time and money to like make everything look nice and pretty and whatever. Whereas with workshops, people want to see things half finished. So you can start workshops whenever you want, and we'll talk about how to get experts to host them for you so that you can learn for free, which is huge. And I would highly recommend, especially at the beginning of your project, to get a land designer in there to help you, and you could use ticket sales to cover the entire cost. So we'll talk about how we did that when we started. So they cost less to run for the reasons I just mentioned, workshops do. And they're easier to sell because people get tangible value compared to like a retreat or something. It's kind of like you're going to go and you're going to feel relaxed. Whereas like, it's like, okay, like, I don't know if that, like, what does that mean? That's vague to everybody. How do I know I'm going to feel relaxed? Whereas with a workshop, you can say, here's exactly what I'm going to teach you. You're going to walk away knowing X. And it's much more specific. It's easier to sell. It's a tangible thing that people can learn and walk away with. So yeah, people generally get into them more. So there's only so much I can give in 1 hour. But if you want the step-by-step guides, material list, what to buy, and where, we have programs below that you can check out. So hit that link. Next, I want to talk about finding experts and getting the help that you need with this. So how to get expert help for free. So this is, here we go. How to get expert help for free. So this is something that we did at the very beginning. I highly recommend this. So essentially we brought on Ryan Hill, who is a renowned, probably one of the top permaculture consultants on the planet. He works on massive jobs all over the world. He turns deserts into oases. Yeah, great guy. And we basically hired him to come out for 5 days, and the first 3 days he was just there with us, and he did a full design of our property. And then the 2 days over the weekend, he taught a workshop to people that were that came for the workshop. So we got him for 3 days, and then hosting the workshop, which he hosted, paid for the ticket price, or paid for him to be there altogether, so that we essentially got the expert help for free. We've also done this in a different fashion where we do just like anytime we have someone come out to the property to help us out, we just like sell a few tickets to cover their cost, and people just follow us around. So we'll have consultants come in and we'll walk around the land, and they'll teach us about the land. Okay, here's your grazing patterns for your animals and where you're going to set your fences up and stuff. And while they're doing consulting with us, we just have a few people that are kind of beside us, and maybe they ask the odd question, and they're just there to learn as well. And the reason that's awesome is it's a win-win for everybody. So instead of these people having to pay these experts the same rate, which is like $3,000 in a lot of cases to get them to come out and work with them, everybody can just pay $300. And then these people come and they get the same knowledge for $300, and you get it for free for essentially being the one to host it and organize it and put it together. Plus, you make new friends, new connections, and every time we've done this, we've made lifelong friends and connections, and a lot of those have been really, really invaluable to the success of our project. So here's how you sell tickets. So we use a Google Doc. This is free, by the way. This is all I did, is we literally put together a Google Doc with the address, directions, what to bring, that's pretty much it. And then we just have links down here where they can go pay. We did e-transfer for a while where they just send us the money, and that's how they do it. We didn't even we'd have no website at the time, nothing. So you don't need anything crazy. And then what we did is we went and posted in Facebook groups that were relevant to us. So something to do with farming or off-grid living, or something in our area that's like our community or whatever. And we just posted in the Facebook groups and said, hey, is anybody interested in this, blah, blah, blah. A third key to doing this is going to be taking very low deposits. So we took like a $50 deposit for people to reserve their spot. And because oftentimes you talk to somebody and then they're just like, oh yeah, I want to do it, and then they forget about it. Well, while they're excited, get them to put the deposit down, even if it's very low. And then they're way, way, way more. We never had anybody give up on a deposit, maybe one person. So they're way more inclined to pay and then actually come because they've done that exchange. Another one is offering payment plans. So instead of just saying, hey, you have to give me $500 up front, say, hey, how about we do 3 payments of 167, or like whatever it is. Now, how to get help on the land. So there's 2 phases of help that we went through: free help and paid help. So free help is a live work exchange. So people come and they bring their own home and they park it on on your property. We got folks bring tiny homes. Some people bought brand new trailers and brought them, and they work for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week in exchange for parking there and living there for free. So it's not really for free because they're working for the exchange on that. But yeah, that's pretty much what's going down. So that was a necessary phase because we didn't have any of the money to pay anybody. So we needed help and we couldn't pay for it. So we got free help and it was great. When we could, once the land started, covering its costs and was doing well, we got paid help. So we got paid help because people are just a little bit more dedicated. They work full time, so you get way more work done. Nicer for training. The relationships are a lot more clear cut, so less drama and that kind of stuff. So that's why. And we always do full time, never part time, always full time, and keep people fully dedicated. Otherwise, their attention is distracted doing other things. So we want to make sure that our team is well built and really cool with what we're doing and the vision we have for our land. And what happens is that the paid help becomes a leadership position. It's a higher caliber of person and experience and whatever. So they're a leadership position. They also bring their own home. And then each one of our leaders, they lead 2 live work exchange people, for example. So those 2 people will, they're basically there for free, live work exchange folks. And that way our leadership positions have help. And now we no longer need to manage the live work exchange people because we have this paid leader person doing it for us. So finding people is actually the easy part. People think that finding people is hard. Finding people is not hard. The hard part is actually filtering the good people out. So we'll get there. But what we did is we posted on Facebook Marketplace for places to rent. So we went in the rental section and posted on Facebook Marketplace. We priced it at $1, $100, like whatever. And then in the description, you tell them what they're doing, what you're doing, what you're looking for. Like tell them the same thing, vision, problem, solution, ask. Where that whole communication strategy, we use that everywhere, whether it's verbal, whether it's over the phone, whether it's in an email, whether it's in something like this. So that's where I would put in the description and just let people know, no, it's actually not $1, it's not $100 or whatever you put there. It's actually free, but it's just a live work exchange position. It's a caretaker position or whatever. So that's what we did. We got something like 600 applicants in 3 weeks. We had to take the post down because there's too many people that wanted it. And these were good people, people with 35 years experience managing full on campground resorts with 35 cabins at them and ranches and people. The experience was way beyond what we were expecting. A lot of people want this lifestyle right now, and housing is really, really not affordable right now. So you get a lot of applicants. And then I would post in some groups as well, not just on the rental section of Facebook in Marketplace there. You could also do Craigslist and stuff too, or your equivalent to that. I don't know what else, the equivalents to that, just whatever kind of listing sites. We did it all for free, by the way. Now, filtering out good people, that is the hard part, actually. So basically, we use a Google application form. It's free. It's just a survey. It's a Google form, just like a Google Doc, because there's a form. So there's 2 sides of it. The first one is alignment questions. You want to ask these people things. And we give all this, by the way. So in our program, if you get in there, we give you all of this. So it's super simple. It's already done for you. And you just have a link to it. So you can send people to. So alignment questions would be things like to make sure they align with your values. So I do things like, what 3 books would you recommend and why? If you had to recommend 3 books that everybody should read on the whole planet. And then you can tell a lot by that, right? You can tell, okay, are they interested in, I don't know, self-development or spirituality or whatever it might be. And then or things like health questions, like what do you do to take care of yourself? Is this person smoking and drinking all the time and whatnot, or is this person doing yoga and they work out and they're a triathlon runner or something? Just whatever aligns with you, ask those questions and make sure that you want that's somebody that you would want on your land. But the most important part is the problem solving questions. So problem solving questions, let's say that you have a caretaker, and you give them an example. So there's two parts to this problem solving question. Part one is the actual problem. So give them a problem and ask them to solve it and see how they solve it, and it gives you a lot of insight into their thinking. So you can say, for example, you can say, okay, this is a real example that we use on our questionnaire, and it says there is a dead tree. It's still standing, but it's a hazard because it could fall over and hit somebody. So we need you to take it down. So how are you going to take it down, and what are you going to do with it after you take it down? And you might get one person that comes in there and says, oh, I'm just going to grab the chainsaw and I'm going to cut it down, and then I'm going to turn it into firewood. And then you might get person B that comes along, and this person's like, well, I'm going to tie a rope to a limb, and I'm going to attach that to a machine, and I'm going to pull it in one direction to make sure that it falls safely in the direction I want it to. We're going to fall it down. I'm going to delimit. I'm going to cut anything under 3 inches for sauna firewood. Any of the leaves and stuff we're going to mulch for compost. And then we're going to, actually this type of wood you can use for the mill. So I'm going to mill it up, and then we'll have some lumber we can use later on. And the rest will be just normal firewood. So like huge drastic differences in levels of experience and safety and like everything. So then the other half of this is after they do that, they complete that. Then I turn around and I say, okay, imagine you have a volunteer or a new staff member or something that you're now training. Now, please explain your process to them and put it in a step-by-step training system so that they can go achieve the same result. Now, the point here is that I don't want to have to train the next person, and I want a systemized approach to everything. So you're testing the person's ability to lead so that I don't have to babysit everybody and handhold because they're a leader. And you're also testing their self-awareness of how aware of their own thoughts are they, which is, those two things are huge in choosing. And when you do that, you'll know exactly the top 3 people that you'll want to bring in. So important points on bringing people onto your land. Be super strict. If they come and they're not what you expected, send them home immediately. Do not wait for that. Just send them home, like legitimately immediately. And do a trial period. So have somebody come for a week, and then have somebody come for 3 months with a probationary period, and then decide if they're going to stay for longer. Second big point is commercial lease agreements. Use commercial lease agreements. Do not use residential tenancy agreements. Residential tenancy agreements give your tenants more rights than you, so they can choose to stay and you can't get them off your property. We had friends that somebody was making crack in their house and they could not get them out for a long time, and eventually the cops came and they said, look, we can't do anything. Like this, they were in there, they're fighting with them for months trying to get them out with the city and the government and the police and whatever. The cops finally pulled my buddy aside and said, look, if you want them out, you're just going to have to wait till they leave and put all their stuff on the street and lock your doors and change your locks. Like, it's just really, really tough sometimes and people get in those bad situations. So commercial lease agreements, avoid all of that. They let you to kindly ask somebody to leave your property if it's no longer a fit. You could also try WWOOFers or Young Agrarians. If you don't know what these are, WWOOFers is a program, I think it's Worldwide Organization of Organic Farmers or something like that. So basically, even if you just have like a little garden or something, you can have these WWOOFers will come out and they'll live on your property, and you give them a place to stay, and you feed them, and they work, I think, 5 or 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. And so that's a really cool option too. Again, be very strict with that. Make sure you have the application process and all of that in place. Otherwise, you never know who you're going to get. Young Agrarians is also a cool option to check out. Now let's get into water, power, and structures. So 2 steps to check for water. But before we do that, I just want to really drive this home that water is life. So a neighbor example, something that happened to our neighbor. They're about 40 minutes away from us. They bought land. They drilled a well. They spent 30 grand drilling this well. It was 500 feet deep. They hit no water. So then they they drilled another well to try again, same thing. So they spent 60 grand. They had almost no water. So this is their example. This is them. That's their property. They started a hostel. I think they have like half a gallon a minute or something, which is really, really low. So that can totally destroy your plans, right? Like that could be that could basically, like, let's say that you want to grow some food. They can't grow food. You want to have animals, they can't have animals. You want to have more people living there, they can't do that because they don't have the water. And now what happens is not only can they not do any of those things on their land, but they also can't sell their land because nobody wants land with no water. So water is the king of everything, and we'll talk more about it here. So first, get the water map from the government. This is free. You can email the county office or the regional district or the governing body in your area, and they have to give you the water map. And the water map will tell you, it can tell you where running water is, where aquifers are, where wells are. So the big key part is your neighboring wells. So if you're in an area that has wells, you can see what all your neighbors are doing for water. So it'll show you how deep the well is and things of that sort and where they're at and whatnot. And the depth of the well can give you insight into, okay, do people have wells here? Is there water here? How deep are the wells and how much do they cost? Because the depth and the cost are in direct correlation. Second, you want to contact local well drillers, which is also free, because they have more insight. They're the ones who actually probably drilled your neighbor's well. So they can tell you about how many gallons per minute that your neighbor's well might be, which is huge. So you could drill a well, but just if you go by just the county office or governing body map or whatever, that doesn't give you everything. It doesn't give you the gallons per minute. That's what GPM stands for. So gallons per minute is super important, and the well drillers should know. They should also know the water quality, and they should also know how deep it is to bedrock, which matters for the drilling cost, because if you have 30 feet, we had 20 feet of dirt, 20 feet to bedrock, which means we only needed one pipe to go in for our well, and the rest was drilled into bedrock 300 feet, 350 feet down. But you don't need casing there, and that metal casing costs a lot of money. So if you don't need metal casing, then it makes your well a lot cheaper. So you can gauge that by asking these questions, and asking them the drilling cost in the area, and they can vary drastically. We had one driller that said it was going to be 30 grand, and another driller came in, they did it for 15,000 cash for us, so half price, which is a lot. That's a lot of money. The next thing I would ask is who installs the water pump, because a lot of people just assume you get a well drilled and then it's ready to rock, but that's not how it works. There's actually a different person that comes and installs the pump. We also go over in our course how to do it yourself and how to save some money with that. Yeah. So generating power. Do not trust your neighborhood solar salesman. We got kind of fucked with this, so we're going to go over why and how we did. So we got sold on an $18,000 solar setup. It was 4 kilowatts, which is actually a lead acid battery setup, which means that it was a 4 kilowatt setup, but because it was lead acid batteries, you can only drain them. You can only use them to 50%. You can't use them any lower than that. You have to charge them between 50 and 100%. So it's only 2 kilowatts of usable power. And it was not turnkey. They sold us on it and told us it was turnkey. And I want to show you what it actually looks like. That's the inside of it. So the inside of this thing is quite complicated. This is the inside of the inverter panel. The inverter is right above it. The control system is the black thing to the right. And they said it's plug and play, and what they meant is that they wire most of this, not all of it, just most of it. We still had to bring all these wires in and hook them all up and do all this stuff. It took us I have an electrical background. I am a third-year electrical apprentice, and we had 3 electricians come in and try to figure this out, because they're not educated. We're not educated on how to, like electricians are not educated on how to install these. They are educated on a normal house panel, which is an entirely different type of power. So it can get complicated. And the reason we believe this guy is because he was an electrical engineer. So we figured, okay, this guy must know a thing or two. They don't really know that much at all. So here's what we do now. We use hybrid power solutions. So in contrast, instead of 18 grand for 2 kilowatts of usable power, you can pay just under 10,000 for 5 kilowatts of usable power. So that is just about almost half as much for over double the amount of power. and you can actually install it yourself easily. You don't need somebody to come install it. It is genuinely plug and play. Anybody who can plug a cord into a wall can set this up and use it. And they can fix it remotely. So if you have Starlink for internet or something like that, they can log into it from their computers and they can fix it remotely, so they can set it up if you have other issues or whatever, which is pretty cool. We haven't had any other issues, but it's really nice to not have to pay somebody to come and mess around with it. So this is what that looks like. They do ship all over, so they're a Canadian company, it's .ca, but that's actually probably better for you given the currency exchange. So yeah. It looks really sleek. It's cool, and they build these in house. They're really customer focused. Their customer service is really great. You can talk to their CEO. He's a young guy that went from a design, like an engineering design background, and then got into this. So this is a really cool one. They have more. They have all different setups. They have like way bigger ones. Also really cool about these is they're self-heating and self-cooling. So if like it gets negative 35 in our climate. In the winter and with lead acid batteries, we have to pick them up. We've got to move them over into a heated space from where they normally are. Whereas this, you could leave this outside and it will heat itself and keep its own battery safe, which is really cool. You can also hook them up in series to one to the next. So with ours, we can't do that. We can't just keep like adding on more. Whereas with this one, we can just plug one to the next and turn it from 5 kilowatts to 10 kilowatts to 15 to 20 and so on and so forth. And just... It allows you to start small because at the beginning, you don't want to spend a whole ton of money and blow your budget on power. You can just get what you need to start, and then you build up. You don't have to throw the system away. You just build up and buy the next and plug it into itself, and then it makes it bigger. So yeah, these are really cool. If you want to get anything, go to them, drop our name. If you do drop our name, they will give you priority service, priority shipping, and you get to skip the line. They also have products that they don't have on their website. So if you call them, then they can give you an update on some of the cool stuff that's going on behind the scenes and different cool products that you can get. They have cool backup generator options coming that are like, I think it's, I forget what it is. I want to say hydrogen powered generator, which is pretty sweet. So you don't have to have, it's just more self-sufficient. So you don't have to have a bunch of fuel and whatnot, gasoline and diesel jennies. And skipping the line is because they have a wait list. So with us, you just get front of service. And how do you know what to get? Like how much power and blah, blah, blah. Just call them. Their service is epic. If you tell them what you're doing and, they'll let you know what you need, and they're good folks. They'll advise you correctly. Wind power is the next one. Wind power we found really hard to measure, and you need really consistent wind, and not a lot of people, because of that, not a lot of people have invested in the technology as much in a small scale setup for someone who just is a regular person. So the solar advancements are way better and have come way farther. So solar is generally almost every time better than wind. So I'd start with solar, and if you wanted wind, you could test it later just with, you can still plug it into the same inverter and stuff, but I would just test it later, start with solar. The next one is microhydro. This is the best. Microhydro is like using a running creek or river or something. The best form of it is you create a channel, and it goes like if the creek is let's say if a creek running through your property is running downhill like this, you would create a little channel that would be lift up off the ground like this until it's 30 feet high minimum, and then you drop the water through a turbine to generate power. And this is pretty much like an off-gridder's absolute dream. This is like full glory. This is like the best solution ever because you have constant power. So that's pretty sweet, but you need running water. So, if you have a creek or something with good elevation, if you have those two things, then you are pretty set for power. It's still going to cost the same, by the way, maybe more to set up now with the price coming down of solar. So if you were trying to set up really quickly, I still probably go solar and then maybe invest in this later down the line. Nothing is cheaper than solar unless you just use a generator. You go buy a cheap generator for, a used generator for like $2,000 or something. That's like good enough to get you everything you want. And you need a backup generator anyway. So essentially, start with solar, go to the hybrid guys; they're great, and then you'll need a backup generator anyway. You always want one just in case you have a few cloudy days or a week's worth of cloudy days in a row or something like that, or whatever. Generally, and the backup Genny is also great. You can have automated ones, so it will just charge your solar automatically. So if it doesn't have enough power, your generator will automatically kick on, charge your batteries, so that you don't really have to do a whole lot. You always want, if your machines die, you die, depending on your climate. So you want to make sure that you are safe. Structures to start with: a home for yourself. So this is something that we never really prioritized, and we regretted it. So I would prioritize a home for yourself so that you're comfortable while you're doing this. So there's creative tiny home financing options. If you're interested in tiny homes, Shelby and I both financed a tiny home. And tiny homes are one of the only dwellings that you could finance, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, we did that. You put 10% down, and then you have low payments. So we pay like, I don't know, $1,300 a month or something. And these are top of the line, $200,000 full custom tiny homes. But if you don't have the money for that, you could get creative with it. And you could say to somebody, because we have people asking to rent stuff out on our property for an investment all the time. So you could say to somebody, hey, how about you put a down payment on 2 tiny homes, and I'll live in one and I'll rent out the other, and they take the money from renting out the other one. So if you rent it out on our property, we would probably make about $4,000 or $5,000 a month off of renting a tiny home. So let's call it $4,000. Now we pay $1,300 a month each to finance it. So that's $2,600. So we'd be left with $1,400 a month left over each month that we could give back to the person who helped us buy them. So now that person's going to own their own tiny home. You're going to own your own tiny home, and they're going to get paid as well, and they could have a vacation property. So pretty epic deal for somebody that might want to do that. So that's how you could get yourself a tiny home, even if you're starting with nothing. And there are other options. There's some decent container. There's a cool container home supplier that we're working with right now. It's in our course and whatnot if you hop in there. And they're cheaper. These guys particularly are the cheapest that we found. They're doing like right now we're building a staff housing unit that has 3 bedrooms in it for 14,000 Canadian. And they can ship them like wherever. So yeah, some of the container stuff is pretty cool. And that's fully insulated. There's no kitchen or anything in it like a tiny home would have. But still, sometimes for the price of the down payment on a tiny, you could actually get one of those and then just help, build it out yourself a little bit more or something like that. So yeah, that's something to look into. We have that supplier listed in the course if you want to scroll down and grab that. And here's Dave's info. He's our financing guy. He's the one who helped us finance this stuff, even though we didn't really have super awesome credit. Yes, his email is Canadian Financial Group, but he does work in multiple countries. It is not just here. He's well connected in that area, and his company works in the US and in other countries abroad as well, and has partners in different areas around the world. So there it is. Pause the screen and copy that over if you want, and drop our name, and he will hook you up. The shipping container option we already talked about. Actually, we talked about that as a home, but I would bring in just a normal shipping container as well, and as like a second structure. The reason I would is because it's lockable, it's weatherproof, and it's rodent proof. If you need that. You need something to put your solar setup, your tools, your garbage at night, so rodents and bears or whatever animals and predators are in the area don't come and get it, and bugs or whatever. The other cool thing is you can create a lean-to roof off the side, and you can turn it into a good hangout area where maybe you have an outdoor kitchen for your guests or yourself, or an outdoor lounge area or whatever it might be. Maybe you'd use it as a little workshop, whatever it is. The third is a well pump house, depending on your climate. So you don't always need this, but we did because we're in a freezing climate in the winter. So we need an insulated house around our well that we're going to put all of our, the pump is in the well, by the way, like down in the well, not above it. But above it, we have a pressure tank, and we have other gadgets and gear and stuff in there. All's in the course on exactly what to do and how to do that. But yeah, I would build a little pump house. And the fourth thing I would do is do whatever you need to make money. Like not whatever you need, but whatever like the thing that you want and decide to go with as your economic driver, do that. That should be on your list of the top things to do for structures, because once you get that going, you'll be making enough money to be able to pay for anything else. One thing I'll say about this too is that with the bylaws around what you can build and what you can't, there's a couple cool ones that we even talked about, and one is the 100 square foot rule. So 100 square foot rule varies. I've seen it be 50 square feet up to like 400 square feet. But there's almost always one everywhere that I've worked with, and every client that I've worked with around the world in 21 countries at this point. So the 100 square foot rule essentially says that anything of a certain square footage or less, you're allowed to build without a permit. So in our area, it's 100 square feet. So we can build a 100 square foot shed or micro cabin or what have you, and it's completely, you don't need a permit for it. So that's a really cool option for rentals, because you could build a little micro cabin rental and not need a permit to build it and get started really quick, which is pretty sweet. The other one is mobile dwellings. So like tent structures, like a bell tent, oftentimes you don't need permits for those because it's just a temporary structure, or like a yurt even in certain areas, sometimes a geodome. Those things are often temporary structures, so that they classify them differently, so you can often do it without permits. So yeah, some cool ways to kind of get around some of the bylaws to get started faster without having to wait for all of that stuff. So, key points on structures is consolidate. You don't want, we'll talk about this in a minute with designing the property to make sure it's efficient, but you want to consolidate everything, because if, you have to heat, what if you have to heat it? What if you have to cool the structure? Now you have to do that in multiple setups. Or if you want electricity in it, they have to run electricity to multiple places. It costs so much more for the extra water lines and the power lines and everything to go and run to all these different things. If you have a house and then you have your water is 1,000 feet away and you have to run between it, you just made your budget. You probably just blew your budget. It's going to cost you an extra $10,000 just to run that line, compared to if you waited and designed your property correctly and you consolidated it all in one area. It would be a lot nicer. For up to me, I would consolidate everything. I'd have one building that had everything in it. Guests don't need as much as you think. People think that if they want to have guests, that they need to set up a glamping setup or something that's going to have a toilet in it and a kitchenette. We wanted to do private saunas at every single stay. Guests don't need that. They just want, as long as you have photos of it so they can use it, that's it. They're not going to pay anymore to come and visit just because they have private use of something. They won't. They will pay the same amount to be able to use it alongside somebody else. And if they want private use of it, like during COVID and stuff, when, just for people's like safety or like whatever, and for like the health authorities or whatever, we just let people book things so they could book it for an hour. You want to use a sauna, book it for 2 hours. And then the next person could book it, but you don't need 10 saunas. The guests don't need as much as you think. One bathroom setup, one shower setup, one sauna or wow factor setup. Don't put them all individual at every single person's thing. Third, try to keep things mobile at first. Everybody's likely to make a few mistakes on their design. So whatever you can do to keep things mobile, so you can pick them up and move them around. That's why I like tiny homes, shipping containers. That's why I avoided putting a septic system in at first. We use compost toilets and incineration toilets. And then that way you can pick it up and you can walk away with it anywhere you want. So yeah, if you can keep things mobile at first, that would be helpful in the future for you probably. And lastly, get a permaculture designer on site. Use that route that we talked about to get free consulting from experts, and use that as soon as you get your land to get a permaculture designer to come and help you design the site, because that's gonna save you a lot of headaches in the future. We didn't know what to do when we started. We just started with what we thought, and we ended up messing a lot of things up and having to backtrack, which was expensive in the future because we set something up, we had to take it down and reset it up somewhere else. We had to do that a lot. So a permaculture designer should save you all of that headache and make things streamlined from the get-go. So the funding options we talked about earlier, those can also be used for structures. And if you want to learn more and get some help around how you can structure those deals and how to bring in that cash, get in our program, and I'm happy to help you out. I'll see you in there. Oh, so yeah, permaculture and regenerative land design is a huge part of just staying efficient. So, permaculture is a design method that works in alignment with nature instead of fighting it. Like you're in the city, we're constantly spraying back weeds and using the weed eater and like pushing nature back. We don't do that. We work with nature. We see what it is naturally doing already, and we plant things and utilize the landscape in a certain way that is gathers momentum in our favor. So, first principle I want to talk about of permaculture is zoning. So this is really effective for your property on how to design it. So your zone 0 is going to be where you spend most of your time. It's going to be your house. It's going to be, we have a big common area where everybody gathers and eats. We have a commercial kitchen and whatnot. That's our zone 0. Zone 1 is going to be where you spend your most intensive hours. So that's your garden is very intense, your greenhouse, your chickens, that type of thing. That's going to be your zone 1. And that's because it takes a lot of time, right? You're going to be in there. It's more labor intensive. Zone 2, that might be like your orchard trees because that is a little bit less intensive. That's like, think about it this way. Your zone 1 is where you're at most of the time. Or sorry, your zone 0 is where you're at most of the time. Your zone 1 is where you're at on a daily basis. Your zone 2 is where you're at on a weekly basis. Then your zone 3, that could get into, we're planting like seasonal, or not seasonal, we're planting like plants that we don't really need to maintain, but still give us value, like lavender or sweetgrass or something like that. We're indigenous, so that's cultural to us as well. And then your zone 4 could be grazing land or whatever you want. Then zone 5 could be your fire break. So the reason this is great is because if you put your garden in your zone 3 and you walk from your house to your zone 3 and you forget a rake and then you have to come back and get the rake and then walk all the way back, well, it's really inefficient. So what happens is by designing it like this, you save hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years in labor costs for time, in fuel of driving things back and forth, what would the next one be? In maintenance cost on your machinery from having to use it so much more, and so on and so forth. So you basically, you're saving a lot by being able to actually make this efficient, let alone the time. So yeah, this is definitely a big one. And again, like I talked about before, if your main water source for your house is in zone 4 and you have to run a water line or your solar power and stuff, this visual is actually wrong on the solar power. The solar power should be right by your zone 0, because running a line this far from your zone 2 or 3 back to your zone 0, that's going to cost you. We ran a 100-foot line, cost us $4,000 for the wire. So this is probably longer than 100 feet. So every 100 feet is $4,000. You put 300 feet there, you're $12,000 for a piece of wire. Not a piece, it'd be huge. It'd be a huge, huge wire to bring your solar panels back to your house. So yeah, you can quickly blow your budget by putting things in the wrong spot. The next one is WAS, the acronym WAS, which stands for Water Access Structures. So again, water is king. Let's say, that well example again, if you put your structure first and then you drill a well and you realize your well is 1,000 feet away because that's where the water is. So now you have to run it from your well to your structure. That's why you do water first and then build your structure next to your water. Or, let's say you buy a house that has a river running through it and you just throw your structure wherever you want without considering the water. And then 5 years goes by and all of a sudden there's a year that floods and now your whole house gets taken out by water because you didn't consider that. Access is another big one. If you don't consider water before access, roads and trails are actually some of the things that drought properties the most that people actually don't even think about. So if you build a road in the wrong spot, it could take the rainwater that's landing on your property and drain it from places that otherwise would normally get water on your land and drought your own land by accident. So again, or if you design your water systems first and you know where your water is landing, then you can use your access to actually put your water into a pond where then it's usable. So one's detrimental and one might save your ass. So that's why water access structures is so important. And we're going to demonstrate a little bit about that. So this is our land map. This is a LiDAR. It's a drone that flew our property and did a full LiDAR scan, I guess you'd call it. So it'll take a second to load here, but yeah, you'll get to see our full property and our designs and why, and our water networks and why that is such a big deal and how it's helped us quite a bit in knowing where we should put stuff. So yeah, this is our property. This is 160 acres. This is what we're dealing with. So yeah, you can get a good look at the topography and stuff there. And I'll start turning on some of these layers of the design. So this is really cool, by the way. LiDAR, this scan costs, I think, $4,000. Yeah, we go over all that in the course as well. And getting a map of your property is a big deal. In order to design anything with it from a permaculture perspective, you pretty much need a land map and you need a contour map. You need something that actually shows you the contour. But contour, we'll bring up some, here's contour lines. So that's what contour is. Contour is basically the line that's perfectly level, right? So here, you see this dip right here. You see right here, you can see it come out. Well, that's perfectly level. So what that is like, that's kind of a little lookout point that's protruding from the mountain. So yeah, that's what contour lines look like. We can shut that off. And there, leave our contour lines. There is, oh, this is cool. So this is showing how the water works on the property and how the rain falls and hits the land. It will take a minute to load here, but it's very, very interesting. So you can see these blue things starting to load down here. And that's showing us, we'll go up on the mountain here and it'll show us exactly where all of the water is landing. Here it comes. So that's where all the water is going on our property, which is super interesting because now we know where to build things and where not to build things based on the water flow. So it shows you exactly where everything is going. You can see all this water is coming down into this gully and down here too. So yeah, it's really, really interesting to be able to show you where you should and shouldn't build things. And then I'll go over the water access structures and how that's helped us quite a bit actually. So we'll turn off all of that and we'll leave the contour lines on, and then we will go to our designs. So first, let's start with water. So you'll be able to see some of these. So these are all of our ponds. We plan on building 35 ponds on the property. Obviously, not everybody needs to do this, but yeah, so there's where our ponds are going. And we use that water feature I just showed you to decide where these are going to go, because then we know where the water's falling. So for example, a good demonstration of why we don't do access roads first is someone, see all these ponds right here? Well, this was an access road and it was quite steep. And what happened is in the springtime, this is the good thing to watch out for. In the springtime is when normally you see properties in like summer or whatever, right? And people advertise for certain seasons because they want to sell the property. Well, with these properties, you want to get a good look and understand them in every season, because, for example, you might come in the spring and there might be running water and you're like, sweet, I have a creek, and then you're going to rely on that, and then you're going to go into summer and you realize, oh, that whole thing's completely dried up. We've had clients like that. Rushing creek, they thought it would never end, and then fully dried up. They had no water to drink, no water to water their plants, nothing. So we... in the spring, we had all this water coming down this road and causing huge ruts. You couldn't even drive anything up it. So what we did is a great design for an element of permaculture, is instead of trying to force a road through there, we turned it into a network of ponds that are water falling into the next one, or turning it into that, because we haven't started digging those ones particularly yet. So the next, we can do roadways. So you see this used to be roadway up here through these ponds, and instead we took a left here and we went all the way around. So now we have our roadways, and we put in some of our cattle lots and whatnot. So this is where we're going to be grazing. So now we have water and access, human access and animal access. And after that, we didn't know where to put any of our Airbnb stuff to be able to make some money. So what happened is it just showed us itself. We didn't have to design that in because it showed us where we should put it. So we had all our access roads in, and we had all our animal access in, we had all our water networks in, and we realized that, hey, there's these perfect spots up here where I can't do anything with water here because it's on top of a hill. I can't put a pond there. I can't put a swale there. I can't collect water there. And I can't do anything else with it because I don't have any need to get there. Animals cannot graze there, so I don't have access there for animals because it's just rock. But what I can put there is structures. I can build stuff there, and it has an epic view over the mountains to the east. So yeah, it just if you pick one, if you start with water and then do access and then do structures, by the end of it, it will show you where you should take the next step. So this is a really, really cool example of that. So yeah, I hope that's reasonably helpful. You can also see our fire break zones that we're putting in and so on. So yeah. You can contact your local governing authority for a mapping system. It will not be this. You will get a 2D map like on a piece of paper, and it might be accurate enough with the contour lines, but it might not. This 3D one is really cool. Don't overpay for these. Our guy does these for $4,000. He flies anywhere in the world to do them. But I've had other people pay for LiDAR like $16,000+, and it was not very good, and they did not get this 3D rendering. So be careful with who your suppliers are. So yeah, that is water access structures and how to start designing some of that. So we talked a little bit about our wildfire. I just mentioned our fire break around the perimeter. So there's a few things that you can do with that. So you want a fire break zone 1, which is you clear trees for. Basically, the rule of thumb is 1.5 to 2x the height of the tree. So if the tree is 60 feet tall, then you're going to want something that's between 90 and 120 feet wide for a fire break. And that means you clear everything out. So you clear the trees out, you clear the shrubs and bushes out, that's all fully clear. You keep the grasses low. And then your fire break zone 2, you leave some trees, but you limb them up. So anything with the limb that's hanging down, and there's 13-foot gap there, you take that limb off and you get it out of the way so that the ground is fully clear. And it's really cool because it works as a little bit of an animal highway. Like on our map there, you saw it's all around that edges. So now we can easily use the fire break, again, stacking functions, as a little animal highway to move the animals around our property and for access roads to drive around our property and get access to the other areas. So yeah, that's what we do for fire break. And then we have the animals manage that. So instead of us going and cutting the grass, we feed it to the cows, and they come and they just eat it, and they regenerate the soil, and therefore we could pull carbon credits, and we have better soil health, and that helps defer fires as well. A big thing that we're going to do as well is metal heat shields. So we have metal siding on almost everything. So our tiny homes have metal siding on it. Our sheds have metal siding on it. Everything that we're doing has metal siding on it. And in the future, if we wanted, we could put a 1.5 inch spacer and put another layer of metal siding. And that creates a heat shield, which deflects about 60 to 80% of the heat, which is massive and should be able to save your building from a wildfire. In the California wildfires, the Paradise California wildfires, there was a house left standing. It was by an architect who knew it wasn't an if, but a when. We have to learn how to live with wildfires. And he did that. He did that strategy with the heat shields, and it was one of the only houses left standing, which is really, really amazing. So that, and there's a few other things, but those are the main ones for wildfire protection. We have a water trailer that we tow around as well with a pump, or that we're like putting together right now. We bought a big water tank, like 4,000 liters or something like that. And we dig a V ditch around the perimeter. So a V ditch would be a ditch like that, about maybe 1.5 feet deep, and then it's a little less angled here, so the cattle can still get into it. And that way, fire coming from this direction can't. It's just for brush fire, like fire in the grasses. Fire doesn't travel downhill very well, so that helps mitigate that. You can also use programs to check your land before you buy it, which we can go over as well. So Ventusky is a program that you can do that. Like you can go and you can see a heat map, you can see the wind direction. So like if your property is right here and the prevailing wind is going to the east, then you can see that your fire, if it starts to the west of you, the wind's going to blow it right into your property. And then if it starts to the east of you, the wind's going to blow it away from your property. So now you know which side of your land to focus your fire resources on, so that you don't waste all your money focusing it in the wrong spot. These are really powerful. You can see the weather. You can see how much rainfall. So this is our land, right? We're here. This is Rock Creek, but we are up on this hill. So we're double the elevation of Rock Creek, of our nearby town. So if you go by the weather on the town weather station, it might be way different than where your property actually is, whereas this gives it perfectly accurate for your elevation and where your property is. So it might not be snowing at all in the nearby town, but on our property we might have 2 feet of snow already, which could drastically change your plans. We actually started towing things to our property once with that in mind, and ended up almost sliding our equipment off a cliff because there was like 4 inches of ice all the way up the road, and we didn't know because we checked the weather station and not something like that, a program that's much more accurate. So now where do you start with all of this? Like, where do you start? So do you start looking for land? That's a huge common question. Everybody thinks, we're going to go start looking for land. No, you don't. Please don't do that. I'm going to tell you why. Second, do I start finding people to buy the land with? You don't do that either. That can result in really poor relationships, and most of these sort of situations don't work out very well. Again, I'll tell you why. No, you don't do that. So if you don't have a plan, you don't know what you're doing on the land. And if you don't have a plan and you don't know what you're doing on the land, then you don't know what land is right for you. So if you don't have a plan, then you could never possibly be ready to go look for land. You might find something that is totally the wrong zoning, right? You might, let's say you get land, and then you're like, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to do some glamping, and then you realize, my zoning doesn't allow for that. Well, now you're kind of messed up. You made one of the biggest purchases in your life, and didn't get the expertise to get the right land zoning for your property. And then animals. What if you want to have cattle? If you want to have cattle, then the water needs are going to be super different. If you want to have more than a few families living there, your water needs are going to be super different. So if you buy land that has 5 gallons a minute out of a well, then you won't have enough for animals. You won't have enough for an orchard. You won't have enough for all this stuff. So you have to know what you want to do before you know what land is right for you, so that it doesn't get messed up and that your project can move forward. And if you don't have a plan, you can't clearly communicate your vision. So how are you supposed to go find somebody to work with you if you don't even really know and you're not super clear on exactly what you're doing? Then it makes for an unclear arrangement and agreement, unclear expectations between two people, and then the relationship is bound to not really work out. So if you don't have a plan, you don't know who you need on your team. If you have a plan, your plan shows you exactly who you need on your team, because what you're doing dictates who you need. You don't even know how much you would need if you're going for money and whatnot. You need the plan first. So we have a saying, we call it treat it like a business. This has nothing to do with corporate related stuff and everything to do with just taking it seriously. That's all I mean by that. I just mean take it seriously. If you want to dream about it and just like kind of willy-nilly it, then it's going to remain that way. But if you take it seriously, you can actually do this. And that starts with actually making a plan. So start with that. And a big thing here is you don't know what you don't know. Hopefully you learned something on this workshop. And, this is just such the tip of an iceberg. Like, it's just the tiniest little bit and taster that we're giving you here. So a lot of it is two points. So these programs that we put together, they give you two things. And one, the whole concept of you don't know what you don't know, they give you the positives and the negatives. They give you the opportunities that you never knew even existed out there to make this actually possible for you. And two, it gives you basically a roadmap to avoid all the major pitfalls so that you don't fall into those along the way, so that your project can be successful. So that's why we do what we do. That's why we give you our pre-filled out plans. That's why we give you our step-by-step guides. And we are here to help. So this is possible for you. You know, there's a whole community out here that really, really wants to support you. You know, we got, I don't even know at the time of this recording, we got thousands and thousands of clients, 4,500 plus clients in over 21 countries around the world. Very engaged people. They're super stoked to get on board and help you and greet you in the groups. We got people that meet up for holiday meals and make lifelong friends, and people that come back and visit us every year. And no, it's great. People send us photos all the time of them meeting up with each other and helping each other out and going in on projects together. So yeah, I want to go over a few things with some of our clients and just show you some of the stuff that has been has worked for them. So I want to go over FJ's example. So him and his family started from scratch. They basically went out, they bought 40 acres in Pennsylvania. They did not have the money to buy it. You know, they used the methods in our program to be able to do that. And just by talking and using our communication methods, they got $400,000 off of the property that they were buying. They got $200,000 worth of free machinery. They got a bulldozer, they got a truck, they got a bunch of tools, they got a tractor, all sorts of stuff for free with the property. And the property was almost turnkey, ready to generate income to cover all their bills. They had a house and they had 2 cabins on it already, and a barn that had a really great upper suite that they could rent out. So yeah, really, really awesome. And they made connections with a local farm that offered to basically come and build an entire organic farm on their property completely for free, funded by state money. This farm had extra state money and they wanted to just come and bring it in and build out their entire farm for them. So lots of really amazing stuff. This is FJ here. I just wanted to show you a little bit. This is their property. So this, yeah, that's a cool example from FJ's place. Where were we? And we went over Carson's already, went over Cole's. Jonathan is a crazy example. Jonathan went from zero. He landed in Costa Rica with, I think, $2,000 in his pocket, which is hardly enough to live off and get rent. And he ended up raising $3.2 million. And he bought 5 acres at first to build a community. And then he raised so much money that he bought 50 more acres next door to expand that. So 55 acres total. And he wanted to build a community, or is building a community in Costa Rica. And he posted this in our group chat saying that he raised $1 million. Says, check this out, brought in another $1 million. I was like, whoa. And then, you know, we did this podcast episode. Yeah, these are his casitas that he's building. It's here's his greenhouse. So yeah, people are doing this is totally possible is basically all I'm trying to share. Mary, she bought 6 acres in South Carolina. She's got yurts, teepees, gardens, animals. She did that in 11 months, which is really, really amazing. She partnered with someone to get the land. She homeschooled 6 kids, and now she has a Waldorf-inspired school, an education center there, which is awesome. And we shared with you some other stuff already. So that's really just all to say that this is possible for you. And yeah, if you feel aligned, scroll down, get a course that feels right. You know, I just want people to stop dreaming about this and let's actually make this happen, because it is possible for you. And we are here to give you all those guides to make it so. And I will see you in there. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to helping you bring this to life.